Hello, everybody. Today we have a conversation about organization from a psychic perspective. And today we are delighted to receive members of Youthlink, Madhu, Namu, Jisung, Aurore, and Lucrezia. So to launch a bit the debate, my first question would be, how would you define your connection with your inner being, with your psychic being, with your inner guidance? How could you define that?
So for me, the psychic being, or what I understand to be the psychic being, is me when I'm able to kind of drop all the fears or desires or other things that influence me. I think there's quite a big difference from when I'm thinking and when I'm being. And psychic being is, of course, the being part instead of the thinking part. And it's when I have some clarity that is a part that it's when I have the clarity that I recognize which parts are fear-based or which parts have been influenced by external influences, and then manage to understand that past these things, what is the thing that actually comes up from within? What is the decision that wants to be taken from within? Doesn't necessarily also have to be a decision, but I would say would be the difference. So a lot of the times I'm on autopilot mode, and I think I almost choose to be on autopilot mode as well, where I do a lot of things without necessarily being conscious of it. Most of the times also because I can afford to, not on a monetary level of course, but afford to in the sense that it is not something that I feel such a strong need for clarity or a decision. And then when I am faced with something that feels more important, that's when I try to calm myself down, the thoughts within me, and bring out that part that can make a decision really based on the observable reality, as per se, without being influenced by all the other thoughts and fears and worries and desires that come up on a day-to-day basis.
I think building up from what he shared, that was beautifully said. Also, I find that often where I connect to my psychic being, if I can claim so, maybe it's never that. But I think we do have a connection that we can tap into if we allow ourselves to go there. But I find that it's the highest voice actually in ourselves. We have a lot of voices, a lot of narratives, a lot of personality within ourselves, and I find that the highest thoughts that we have and the highest vision that we have actually come from this psychic consciousness, where often you don't even have the full answer of what you're thinking, but you are connected on a very simple and straightforward how to say it's non-mechanic. It's not you processing a thought, it's not you going through your fears or emotions, or it's a very clear answer that comes, which doesn't have a background, which doesn't have the weight of your negative positive, which I wouldn't know in words how to define it better, but it is the part of ourselves that is most aware, which most often we switch off because our brain takes more space and takes more voices. Yeah.
For me, my inner being, yes, it takes this like shape of inner voice or like higher consciousness, like my best part in a way. I feel it's depend of the day, but sometimes I realize his presence because I'm not respecting his presence. That means like I'm doing thing and I feel like I'm not aligned with what I'm supposed to be, and I feel it in my body, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm doing, there is something like wrong, which is like not aligned with what I want to be, and I take this pause and I'm like reflecting on that and what I have missed in a way.
Also, I think because I said that is the highest voice, but I think it's also one of those voices that comes mainly when you're in silence. Because as I mentioned, a lot of the time there is movement in our head, there is movement in our guts, emotions, all of that. And we also come with a lot of structures that we inbuilt in our system through society, schooling, parenting, this and that. And so a lot of the voices actually are voices of someone else that got, maybe stuck in our head or in the behavior we have, and we judge ourselves upon these structures. But I think the psychic being that does not judge yourself, it doesn't come with this, oh, this is right, this is wrong. It's more like a silent voice that has space only when you shut this right and wrong. And yeah, so that's why it's not easy to tap into it on a daily basis life as humans, because we're still very much conditioned by the surrounding that we have, by society, by other people's opinion, by whatsoever. So yeah, I think it's the silence within ourselves, which brings more knowledge than actually what we take from the outside often.
It's like the silence, and at the same time, it's like a presence. It's like a deep presence who, like, you feel it's like your whole like being is like alive, and you are the right place with the right people and doing the right thing. Like the moment I have felt like connected with mine, if it's like really like that, I felt like that.
For me, the inner being, I'm learning Tai Chi, and in the perspective of Tai Chi, we don't divide inner being and outer being. Just there's only one being, the body and mind monism. So I agree about that perspective. So just I don't deny about the inner being, but I can't say something I didn't experience. So yeah, that's it.
For me, the moments where I felt connected to my psychic being, or at least what I believe it to be, it's just the moments where I managed to be fully present in the moment and kind of forget the concept of me. And like just in an afternoon, if I'm sitting on a bench and there's a beautiful sun after the rain, and I can see like sun drops in the drops of rainwater, and I completely forget that I exist, and I'm just focusing on the beauty around and everything. I think that's moments where I'm really connected to something deeper or higher or whatever we can call it. Yeah.
I want to connect to what he said, that we actually don't have a separation of the inner being and the outer being, which I do agree, but we are very disconnected from it, I find, in humanity, honestly. And as part as they are one, we created duality within the two. And I think in a moment we are able to function from the inner being, that's when we create this connection with all of them, and that's when we actually use our brain, our heart, and our body in full potential, and we're not dividing them anymore. But in reality, for me, as of now, how I see humanity, we are very divided, even though they exist at the same time, at the same place.
Thank you. So far, we have, all of us, you have talk about your own inner individual experience. And what about this organization that we are trying to build right now all together? Do you think that this inner connection, whatever we call it or whatever we experience it, can show up also in a group like we are all together today, only by the intention or maybe the way that we are talking about? And can you experience something which is happening also in a group like now?
So there's always, as far as I have observed it, a flow of energy, and that is dependent on each and every individual that is part of the group, as well as all the surrounding environments of that particular location. If there is a person who's a little bit more nervous in the group, for example, and is shaking their leg, we can observe quite often that the person sitting next to them or opposite of them also start getting that energy, and it can very easily spread to other people as well. If one person is anxious, that anxiety leads to a certain trigger, which leads to a certain response, which triggers somebody else, and so on and so forth. Like, for example, yesterday we had quite a heated meeting because I think a few of us got triggered for different points, and some people came with nervousness into the room as a starter. In order for us to hold that kind of sincerity or that psychic aspect of ourselves and bring that forward even in a group setting, I think it's very important for us to try to be aware of our current state. So even if I can't change the state that I'm in, there is no real need to change the state that I'm in, but at least for myself to be able to recognize what state I'm in, and then to be able to communicate that with the rest of the group. So the moment I recognize and say, hey guys, I'm feeling a little bit anxious right now, and that's why I'm having this kind of energy, it's a lot less likely to trigger the anxiety in other people, and it would move more towards an understanding atmosphere, as an example. And the fact that we are able to recognize that in ourselves already takes us away from the defensive part that would come out otherwise as an automatic response. Say, for example, I'm scared, and somebody says, haha, why are you scared? And I hadn't noticed that I was scared. Then I would probably take that as a personal attack and be like, what? I'm not scared. I'm completely confident. What are you talking about? And whereas if I had already accepted the fact that I am scared at the moment, for whatever reason, then it becomes a possibility to open the conversation for a deeper conversation or for a connection, instead of snapping it into a more aggressive conversation. And I think I might have strayed a little bit off topic. I don't remember what the question was.
Can you repeat the question one more time? I forgot. No, I think Namu has quite replied in the sense on the question, because he said that whenever in the group or in a group or in an organization someone is experiencing some specific mindset or emotions, it can also trigger the same in his neighbor or the people in front. And the question was similarly, if we are focusing on a topic which is the psychic being or the inner being, or we try to relate from a space which is more deeper within ourselves, has it the possibility to influence also a group like that, whatever the group is?
I think also to add, there are quite studied methods to also bring that inner beings together in a group, where, for example, there is a lot of study on music of how, like, singing together, chanting together, playing music together can help to bring that energy together, or having simple things that we might be used to in Auroville, but they really function. Like have a chant, an Om chant before starting a meeting, or take a minute of silence together to direct the energy into the space you're in. Because often we're living an individual life where I'm taking care of myself and the environment around me, which not necessarily has other people all the time. But then when I enter a room where there are other people, I need to tune in with that energy. And if I come with my individual, bubble, it's very difficult for me to embrace the others and be compassionate and find the energy to actually sustain the group and all of that. And it can happen because we're not perfect. We're not, we're not trained from when we're kids to actually do that. But I think there are methods that if the will of the team and the organization is there, they can be implemented to facilitate these kind of connections. And sometimes they can be used on a daily basis. Sometimes it's more of a sharing that can be done once every few months or whenever it's needed. But to connect on a deeper level that is not a narrative that you created in your head. Also to get to know the others. Like sometimes I have my own opinion, my own reflection upon others, but it's still dictated by the memories I have in my head. And we do have also, we can tap into our senses and all of that, but they might be manipulated at times by our thoughts, by whatever. So I think one thing that is very important in order to be able to be around other people is to actually connect. And you choose how deep to go in that connection according to how much is needed also, but it's a very important aspect of being able to build the group, I find.
The fact that we have this connection, like, with our, like, inner being, I really feel and I really believe it's have an impact on, like, the general group, but I also believe the opposite, that the, like, spirits, in a way, of, like, the general group have also an influence, at least on my personal being. I think it's working both.
Also, I think starting from the fact that we're having this conversation and questioning these things, for me it's very obvious that as humankind we're not yet there in that psychic being fully in our capacity, because we're still exploring, we're still trying to learn about ourselves and not just our biological self, but also our energetical self, or our inner being, or whatever, consciousness and collective consciousness. I think in this process one of the main aspect is will, where you intend to want to do a work on yourself and with the others to achieve a place where you can actually meet in that inner being and psychic being. Otherwise, if you don't have that will, you're driven by your ego only, in that sense. And you might be right in some points, but you can't convey your point because it's coming as a imposition, or as a it's not a shared reality. You're kind of pushing your reality onto someone else, but you're not allowing each other to tap into it together. And it happens, even between friends, it happens. Maybe I have a strong opinion and I push it, and then I find it hard to let go because for me it's very important, or whatever. So I think the main thing is to have will and to observe yourself constantly and check in with the others and yourself.
I think it came up in the previous point as well, but I think one of the important aspects for tapping into that space is to drop that sense of I to a certain extent. When we're having a discussion or anything that's a little bit more important per se, and there's too much of I involved, that discussion is likely to not go anywhere. If there's personal interests or personal opinions that are clashing, there's no real way to get past personal opinions from the term of conversation. We're never going to find, never is a hard time, and we is a hard word as well, but very difficult to come to a common agreement when we're talking on personal opinions. We're all, in a way, allowed, or it's accepted to have our own personal opinions. But I think there's a possibility that as an organization, if all the individuals in that discussion or work or whatever it may be drops that I aspect, and not necessarily go into the we aspect either, but can look at it just as is, as things to be done, or take the controlling aspect or the personal aspect out of things that has to be done, it becomes a lot easier to do. So as an example, we had a conversation yesterday about getting petrol. So, sorry to bring this up. We had a long discussion about who should go and get the petrol, because we have a petrol common scheme and somebody has to go buy the petrol. And when it's a conversation where everybody's thinking of themselves, it's like, oh, I don't want to go get petrol. I don't have the time to go get petrol. I don't have the money to go buy the petrol. Or I need that petrol. It becomes very difficult of a conversation to see who are all the stakeholders, how much they're willing to do or not to do, and the conversation just doesn't go anywhere. But however, if we do manage to drop that I aspect of it, it becomes quite clear that it's needed to go get the petrol for one reason or another. There's people who feel the need for the petrol. There are people who can go. We are a lot of people, there's flexibility. And if we drop that I aspect and that fear, or the worry that I will not have the time to go for it, or I would not want to do that at that time, or whatever, it becomes a lot easier to go for the decision that is needed for the group. And then who does it will change flexibly depending on when works for whom. But that at least lets us get past the point of not doing something because we're afraid to be the ones doing it. We can get to the point where we agree to do something because we think it's the right thing to do, and then we kind of figure out organically how we go about doing that thing. But it helps us gather the value system that it helps us gather the values that we have and see as the values, where do we join together on those values. And it's a lot easier to talk about it like that than me versus you is my observation.
The five of you were attending this discussion about getting the petrol yesterday?
Yes. It was a warranty.
Okay. Would it be possible to get we heard about that, Namu, would it be possible to listen to what happened yesterday within yourself when you... I mean... if possible.
I think, to give context, what happened is that it started because we have groups that are dedicated to go on a monthly basis, and it happened that a few times for 1 week or longer the petrol was not being filled because everybody was busy. We kind of forgot to mention that it was empty, so people then go get the petrol and they get stuck in tunnel because there is no petrol, and things like that built up a little bit of tension, which it could have been very minimum because the problem is not a big problem, but because that tension was built, when we had that conversation, it came through as an issue instead of being a solvable problem. And so what happened is that initially there was a question of why the group that was supposed to do it didn't do it, and how can we find a better system for it to function. And that's where we had some conversation that people were like, oh, but I don't use the bike, I don't need to go get petrol because I'm cycling. And some people tried to remind the team that we chose to do this as a support for the team, and it's a collective decision, which is to support the individual. And so it's not a matter of who needs it or not, but it's a matter of giving a service back to the team. And I think there are days maybe where we're more connected to that sense of collective, where we automatically want to do that because we know that it's serving someone that we care. And there are days that maybe we're more into our triggers and more into our bad mood or whatever, and that part of yourself gets shut down, and so you see things as an issue and as a problem, and you start building tension with the person maybe next to you who didn't do what they had to do, and maybe it wasn't even their full fault because they didn't know it was empty. So it's kind of like, how can you I know, for me, actually, what I got out of that conversation yesterday is that sometimes we tend to make a little problem into drama, and how can we go away from the drama and actually look at the problem as a solution, and everything has a solution if we look at it. So why do we waste more time into discussing who did what or what hasn't been done, and actually move towards the solution that will make everybody happy, and accept that as a collective, being a collective. Let's say 5 of us say, hey, we should really need petrol because 5 of us need it, and 3 say, no, we don't need it because we cycle. It's very clear that 5 of us in the team really need that, and as a collective we support each other to cater that. And yeah.
Yeah, I think like this story with the petrol, for me, it have also show like for connect with our inner being, from what I have understood, like there is this process of surrendering to something bigger than ourselves. And in terms of decision making in the organization, it's the same process. We surrender to the value of the organization. But sometimes it happens that for specific like event or problem, like the I come into the pictures, and we have all our preferences or situation and all that, and it can be like more difficult to kind of see the bigger pictures for the whole organization, and to detach from the like my personal need and my personal opinion. And there is day where it's more easy. For some people it's more easy than like for others as well. So yeah, it's about that, to be able to detach and see the big pictures.
Also, I want to add one thing that for me, I'm learning the past few years, especially this year. I think growing up, I was always a very emotional person. So whatever reaction people had on me, or my reactions were very strong, negative or positive, whatever it is. But one thing that I started analyzing for myself is that, we talk also a lot about nonviolent communication in Auroville, and trying to communicate better to people and not hurt them and not do this or do that. But we are also humans, right? We have a way of reacting to things still, because we're learning not to be a reactive person, but maybe more active and all of that, but we still have that. And there are moments that this situation will happen where tension will build up and I get angry to someone, and I think it's fair to acknowledge that those things can happen also, and is how you go about it after it happened as well, so that you can improve the next time, but not that because I got angry you will put a face on me for the next year, and I will not let go of that because you attacked me personally or whatever. But to recognize that we all can make a mistake, we all have emotions, we all need time to process, and what I want to convey is that I think our emotions are also a way for us to be authentic in that sense, and I think it's important that we don't feel bad about how we have done one thing. Let's say if today I was tense to this person because they told me something that I didn't like because I think differently, and I answer it with anger, I don't want to beat myself up because I was angry, and I don't want to claim them to be the wrong one forever. I will try to process my own emotion and then also accept that the other person has a different opinion. And I think in an organization that's very much needed, in a family, in a friendship, in anything, because we cannot pretend that we're all the same, that we all think the same, that we act the same. We all have different qualities. We can all tap into these qualities, but at different times, at different stages, and maybe also just not the same. Like some people have this quality and those qualities, and I think being able to also be a strong personality and sometimes use that anger to convey things and without harming anyone, I think it's also valuable and important. Because imagine, we have 4 elements in our nature. We have fire, we have water, we have earth, air. If we just have all kind of people to be fire, it'll be a mess. We will all be angry all the time. We will all be on fire and like with this heavy energy all the time and powerful energy at the same time. But we will burn. So I think it's great that in a context of groups dynamic, you have a bit of all these elements within yourself and within the group, because it helps each other to grow and it helps each other to explore different areas of ourselves, I find. I wouldn't want to be sitting with people that think the same as me all the time, because that will not allow me to grow. And as much as my perspective seems the right one for me, maybe in a few months I realize that, they actually enriched my perspective by giving me their perspective. But you take time to process that, so to allow each other to also not hold those emotions and judge each other, but kind of express how you felt, how it made you feel, that this person reacted like that, and then move ahead and find a better way next time.
I have reflected a lot from what you just said, and I think I have understand something. It's actually not the fact that we do this work on ourselves and we try to be connect with our inner being, who kind of help us to move forward. It's the opposite. It's when we are not connected with our own being, and when we face conflict or difficult situation in the organization, it's how we deal in this kind of situation who help us to grow actually, and to find solution and to grow as a person and as an organization. I was wanted to say something that I forget.
I think it's very positive and very auspicious, because could we say that our basic state is to be connected with our inner being, and whenever there is a situation that rises which is challenging us, and we can get upset or angry towards someone or towards a situation, but 2 hours later it disappeared because we come back to this inner guidance. Could we say that?
The way that we make decisions, even for the petrol one, for example, is that we try to work on a consensus level. And the way we do it is that we sit in a circle, we bring up the topic, and then when we do it properly, we have a talking stick, and everybody says their point and passes it to the person to their left or to their right, but it goes in a circle. So everybody has the chance to speak if they'd like, and they can also just pass the stick without saying anything if they don't have an opinion or a perspective. And the thing that we're trying to do with that actually, to a large extent, is to gather perspective. So oftentimes we also say perspectives that are not necessarily our own, but like, for example, hey, this might lead to these kind of issues. It's a perspective. It's not what I believe, and I'm not scared of this thing happening, but it is one of the options that can come. And maybe Jisang will say another perspective, or will say another perspective. And then after doing that whole circle, we have the collective wisdom where we can look at the issue or problem, or however you want to put it, the thing in discussion, from multiple perspectives. And hopefully pick the one or ones that are more, that's where it goes to the inner being also, right? How do you choose which perspective then? And I think a lot of us, everybody has that innate wisdom where they can, once they hear something that feels right, there is a feeling, and you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Maybe I couldn't see it before because I was angry at Luke, but sorry, example. But now that the perspective has come up, it becomes apparent. My heart says this is the right way. And that, I think, is the way that we are trying to operate. And more often than not also, it happens that we get caught up in my point of view, but this is what I believe and this is how it should be done. And somebody else says, no, that's not how it should be done. This is what I believe. And it does go back and forth a little bit. But the general thing that we're trying to do is to really gather that collective perspective and wisdom and be able to choose from the heart. And also understand that if there's somebody who really does not align with this, if their wisdom says, no, that's not it, guys, I cannot agree to this, then we also can have that space to say, okay, then we pause this decision. It doesn't have to be made now. We can keep this on hold, think about it, sleep on it, and come back next week with fresh perspectives. So it's that kind of collective team building, which also I think leads to the synergy that we have with the current team, that we have taken time to make everybody be active part of the process, and nobody's left out along the decision making. And I think that also jumps into the leadership question.
I want to share that earlier I didn't share what was my perspective during the petrol discussion, because actually I wasn't really affected by it, because somehow I knew that even if it gets heated, even if we disagree, even if we all have different perspectives and different emotions related to this topic, actually almost every time we have this kind of conversation, we always manage to somehow find a way in the end. So most of the meeting, I was just sitting and trusting you guys to come up with something. Just to share that there's a lot of trust from my side, at least towards the team, that we can come up with a solution after everyone has shared their perspective, their emotions, their feelings. Yeah.
I like to build up from where Namu left with leadership, where stating that we live in a world that has grown onto hierarchy and leadership that was based more on power than consciousness. I think one thing that we all have in common being in Auroville, and some of us grew up here or came by choice, is that we wanted to find a way that is different from that hierarchy. And when we first came together in Youthlink, we were trying to build an organization that was more lateral than hierarchical, where everybody can have a say, where everybody is free to share their opinion, and we will take it in and okay, I got lost, sorry. The squirrel. But we really wanted to try and build a safe environment. And I'm gonna say this, maybe I'm wrong, but I think all of us needed to believe in safe environment, because I think many of us went through situations also in life, in schools or this or that also growing up in a society that constantly has issue with economic worries, this, that, whatever, like it's very hard to find your core of trust. And I remember in the beginning of the process of building Youthlink, there was a question asked to us, which was, who do you trust? And like, why? Why do you trust that? And me, myself, 3 years ago, I didn't know how to answer the question. And I was very surprised because I thought I knew. And when I realized I didn't, I understood that the team would have been that place for me to learn to trust again. And knowing that we were friends, I had kind of like that plus point that allowed me to feel safe. And I think while we started building that trust and knowledge about each other also on a work setup, we understood moving forward that hierarchy actually, it's quite a natural element in life in that sense. And it's more of a question of how is the hierarchy used. And we're mainly used to see hierarchy as power and negative and this and that, but nature itself has that hierarchy in most environments and situations. So we looked at that together to see how can we talk about hierarchy from a space of trust instead of a space of fear. And we looked at practical example where we have different teams, like one is finance team, one is project nursery team, one is this team, and there have been, like, some people have put more time into diving into the topic, some people have put more time to dive into this topic, and how can we trust that the work they're doing is valuable for all of us instead of having they need to control everything. And that control need comes from fear at the end of the day, because you have no idea of what's going to happen. So you tend to want to control, so you have an overview of everything, or you have power of deciding or doing this or doing that. So I think when we talk about leadership, I think it's very important that we look at it from a perspective of everybody is leader of their own self, and then there are moments that we can acknowledge that someone knows more about something, and we trust that they will guide us through the path that we want to go because we share values, and not that we're afraid that because he's the only one knowing, he will use and manipulate us to arrive where he wants to arrive. So I think in order to have good leadership, we have to build trust with the person who's leading, or within ourselves also, and and accept hierarchy from a point of view of balance instead of power. Those are the two words that come to me. I don't know what else to say, but yeah.
So, as we've talked about previously with the question of inner being, I think the inner being can only come out when you're not feeling attacked, when you're not feeling judged, when you're not feeling like you have to defend yourself. Then is it possible to kind of tap into the inner wisdom that is there. The moment you're feeling like you're being observed or judged or something, it's very easy for the defensive mechanisms to shoot up, or for fears or worries or the desire to be better than someone else to kind of come up and cloud those judgments. And so one of the things that's quite important, or almost pivotal per se, is to create a safe space within Youthlink where we all feel like we are being held. Not that we're trying to fight against one another to get the better results and to climb up a ladder or sorts. To kind of acknowledge that we're all here for each other to try and work together. And when leadership comes into question, I think Mother says it all in her text of to be a true Aurovillian. To have more capacity in something should lead to more responsibility instead of more power. And that is kind of, I think, to a certain extent, the kind of leadership that we're trying to promote in Youthlink. Of course, it's a work in progress. And I think it's quite simple. At the end of the day, we're trying to create an environment where people can grow, us ourselves included. And in order for a child to grow healthy, you need to have that mother's caring energy where you can make mistakes, you can try different things. Nothing is, there are things that she will advise you not to do, but you're still free to try it. The decision is on you, and then you grow from those experiences. As opposed to, per se, a slave driver, like a slave driver who beats you and maybe gets you very efficiently at one certain task, but you're not necessarily going to grow as a person. Maybe slave driver is a bit of a strong example to take for authoritarian hierarchical models, but that is the comparison that I would like to make, whereas for leadership, for us, we're trying to be that attentive, supporting figure, instead of the one who's pushing from behind or pulling from in front. It's that kind of thing of, hey, you know what, if you need any kind of help, we'll be here trying to help you, but you also have the freedom to try and fail and to experiment. And then if something goes wrong, we'll be there to step in and try to make things work again, of course. But you still have that freedom, and you're not going to have also repercussions from not managing to do something. There's no repercussion for failure. There is, however, repercussion for negligence, but there is no repercussion for failure in Youthlink.
I'd like to take the example of Auroville itself. Maybe it's a big thing to do, but if we look at it, like how the old project started, like through Mother and Sri Aurobindo and all of that, we very clearly there was a sense of leadership, in the sense that we had a main voice that has spoken and has written the vision and this and that, and a lot of people came because of that, and they saw a bigger vision, and they saw a possibility, they saw growth and all that, and so they came together to start something new that was very unknown, but driven by collective, driven by experiments and error and failure and trials and all of that. And I think, honestly, I wasn't there, 6 years ago. I'm still young and all of that. I only can say what I'm saying by observing and stories and all of that. But I feel that there has been a point in Auroville that also through the organization we managed to have this trust where people were known in the groups, and it's not somebody that you have no idea who they are, how they live, so there was that sense of community where the people in the groups are catering the community, and together with the community we're building forward. What keeps changing and what has changed is that the community is growing. So the number of people that we have as a collective will constantly grow, and we do not know everybody, and it's not easy to say, oh, you really came to Auroville with the right purpose or not. And so we started also having a process that judges that and tells people, oh, you're ready, you're not ready, which I find in a way very scary, because we're putting ourselves in the shoes of a judge instead of another human being working with another human being. And what I wanted to get is that I think also in Auroville, when we started having a little bit of troubles in terms of organization and how do we participate with everybody and move forward, is that we lost a sense of trust, because we're in the unknown of what is the purpose of people here. And so by having lost that trust, most people biologically function from a place of reactions where I'm not feeling safe on my daily basis. Maybe I don't even know that, because that's how I function every day. But I'm constantly reacting to things, and I'm not actively putting myself into the collective to try and find another solution. And so then we got a bit lost into pinpointing fingers and getting angry at someone who has a different perspective and all, because we don't know each other, we don't trust each other. And so I think also, like, taking what Mother and Sri Aurobindo say about leadership, they do not want to have anyone who's seen as the person who has the truth. I think everybody has truth in different ways, and how can you tap into your own truth and share that with others? And I think there are parts of the community working towards that, and there are also parts of the community that are very dependent on the figure of Mother and Sri Aurobindo, and that causes a lot of disruption, because we're not anymore authentic to how we want to live and how we are and what we can offer, but we're basing our reality to something that someone said. And as much as what they said is valuable and amazing, it's still our work to know how do we live that and how we are according. We can follow this structure, but I can't say, oh, she said that, so I'm gonna do this. I will implement the knowledge that they shared in my life according to how my being can grow and where I can go. And if we were able to let go of that, of this I don't know where I'm going, but I think if we were able to find ways to restore trust within the community, it's not a fast process, it's not something we can do in one day, but it'll take time. But I think the only way for this community to grow and move forward is to restore that trust. And there are multiple ways, multiple people function in different ways, and to try and cater the needs of people also with that. Because we do have Auroville itself is an organization which, as of now, it's not functional, and it hasn't been for a while, I find, in the sense that we have a lot of people that struggle economically, we have a lot of people that are constantly thinking of how to support their basic needs, and as I said before, they're in the reactive mode instead of actually giving their self to the community, because they constantly need to think of how to take care of themselves. And my understanding of Auroville wasn't really that when I joined, and I was very young and naive in that sense, and I thought everything was figured it out. And I came thinking, oh, everybody actually has what they need, and that's beautiful because you can tap into your creativity, and you can grow only when you tap into that creativity and into that space. And yes, part of it is there. We have that space available in Auroville. There is a lot of creativity that you can find everywhere in this community. But sometimes it also becomes hard to tap into it when you become a Aurovillian. And I think that's something that we should look at as a community on how we move forward. Like, why do some people have actually that capacity by having more space for it, and other people don't have that? And yeah, it's a bigger conversation, but yeah.
I don't want to speak about leadership, but I would like to come back to what Namo was saying about how he was describing like when people join Youthlink, how they can grow within the organization. Because I feel it's not just people who join the organization who have like the possibility to grow, but it's also in the way we have organized Youthlink right now, the different team that we have. I feel it's like represent a lot this inner work that we do, in the sense, so right now it's divided in 4 teams. So for example, there is the soft skill team. We provide activity, workshop, seminar. We are related to like understand better our being. It can be like emotional meditation, non-violent communication, what else? Qigong, like all this kind of practice who help the people to be more in touch with themselves. There is the art skill team, which is like more activity related to concrete and specific job, carpentry, electricity, landscaping, all of that. There is the outreach team, which is like more connecting people from inside Auroville, but also organizations from outside Auroville, and who create gaps. And the last one is the community building team. And then they do more like events like karaoke night or dinner, community dinner and all that, who help people to connect with others in the community and like to create this bond. And I feel these 4 aspects that we have in the organization, it's a bit also connected with this inner work that we do, or we try to be more in touch with our emotion, for example. We try also to, like, outreach team, for example. For me, it's like, it's make me reflect about how I can shift also from my outer and my inner being during the day and during the activity that I do. The community building team also, it's like all this activity who like brings people together. It's also something that my inner being need to be nourished to connect with people and like create something together. So I really feel, to come back to your first question about, is that because people who work at Youthlink do this work on themselves, and then there is this kind of specific spirit in the organization? I really feel it's at the 2 level, like, because we are trying to do this job, like the organization is like that, but also because the organization is like that, it's influenced a lot ourselves, but also people who benefit from our program. And it's really something that we try to spread, and I think it's one of our main like goal and objective and value, that we want to bring more awareness to all the people who came at Youthlink, even if they are like participating only, or if they join the team as like co-worker. But it's really one of our like main mission, and yeah, I'm happy to be part of Youthlink.
One last. is to connect.
You can cut her.
No, I think it's to connect because we're actually a group of youth that you invited, and I have a point on that.
Someone of Mother?
No, we're good. I go? I think also connecting a little bit everything. We were a youth group that was invited to this conversation, and I want to highlight one important thing about organization, especially in Auroville, where we're trying to also cater different target audience, where it's not just, the pioneers that are running everything and that's it. I think where we got a bit our feet stuck is that we did not find ways to integrate the youth in Auroville. And I'm talking from a place where I was here when I was 17 and I tried to integrate myself and I really had to push it to find what is possible for me in Auroville and what I can access. And I am also grateful that I had money to do that, because not every youth has the money to do that, especially growing up in Auroville. And I think Youthlink as of now is the only youth organization in Auroville, and at least run by youth and held by youth. Anyway, maybe that's my claim, but as an integration portal, I find this is the only place. There is Youth Center, there is Youthlink, but it has always been very difficult to integrate elders and youth. And I think if we were able to bridge the gap, already a lot of amazing things would happen, because we can have the wisdom of the elders as we can have the wisdom of the youth, instead of judging each other to be old mentality or you're just naive and young. So I think that's a very important thing that we should look into our community, how to bring more youth in and use their energy and creativity. Unless you can contradict what I have to say, they can cut it.
Yeah, they can cut it. I mean, honestly, what I think we need to do is start looking beyond the title of youth and elders and whatever. It's just people who are interested in making some sort of movement in whichever direction that they see as fit. I welcome personally that energy. That the energy is the essence. It has nothing to do with your age, your gender, where you're from. It's the energy that brought everybody to Auroville, and the fact that this place is maintained, created, moving forward, and that's it. Like youth, no matter what age you are, we are the city of unending youth, right? And the youth that never ages. Sorry, not unending youth. And yeah, I think it's beautiful what you're doing with this radio also, because you're trying to, though there is a lot of the specific criteria that you're bringing together, my suspicion is that the content of the talks will not be very different from one group to another. So yeah.
Thank you for listening to this testimonial. If you would like to take part in this project on the inner being, or if you have any questions or comments for our team or participants, please feel free to contact us using the email at the bottom of this webpage.
This is Auroville Radio, voices from the city of Dawn.